Hey, it's Yobachi 2007, and I'm here coming at you to comment on Mr. Plinkett commenting on my comment to his comment video about Rogue One. So, if you follow much Star Wars discussion on YouTube or whatnot, you've probably run into the Mr. Plinkett videos at some point or another. They did a pretty renowned review of the prequels that I mostly agreed with. Uh, for the most part, I thought the prequels were pretty horrendous. Other than the third one, Revenge of the Sith had some good aspects to it. Had some pretty horrible aspects to it in a couple of ways. But overall, I thought it was a pretty good film. But the first two, I think we can all agree, were absolutely terrible. Um, so just kind of to set things up a little bit more, uh, the Mr. Plinkett, which is really a character of these guys from Red Letter Media, half in the bag that they use to do their reviews through. Um, they decided that they didn't dig this movie, which is cool. But their reasoning for why both of it didn't make much sense, and I guess they got a little butthurt because I disagreed uh, with their commentary, and so they decided to try to mock me or whatever in one of the comments. Hadn't really noticed it the first time I was on the video, probably because I didn't get all the way through before I started making a few comments. About the second time I came back and watched it and realized I had been responded to. I was kind of over it a little bit or whatever and just kind of moved on at the time, so I never responded to their response. But after a while, I decided I would make a response video as opposed to the fact that I never commented back to what they said there. So I guess they kind of took the position. I mean, some people like Rogue One. Most of us do. Some people don't, and I don't really care whether people like it or not. I just don't like narrow views of why the movie must absolutely be bad because you don't like this one aspect or another. Different people might have different reasons for the enjoyment of a film. I know why I enjoyed it, and the condescension that came from Red Letter Media, such as you could only like the film if you're basically brain dead and you just like explosions. It's just basically silly. I'm a person who's really very much disinterested in movies based on just visual explosions, especially or action scenes. That doesn't really move me very much. That could be an added bonus to a film, basically the icing on the cake, if it has all the other or has other prerequisites that make it film good as far as the story or other the introspection of what the movie is investigating and what the movie is portraying and delving into. And that's what will get me into the movie, and everything else then can be good aspects that it adds to the story or whatever the movie's investigating. I'm largely interested in movies and how they take a look at the human experience and what they can portray about the human experience. And so that's some of what I like about Rogue One. Um, let's just get quickly to the comments that I made on the video, and I'll just play a little bit of the audio of the Mr. Plinkett video that they had, where they responded to my comment, their first quoting part of what I said, starting here.
Likable characters, no story?
Hold on, let me run
Rogue
back
One didn't allow me to get invested in the characters the way The Force Awakens did, except Chirrut and the droid, quite frankly. But I didn't dislike the rest of them. They just didn't spend enough time developing the connection. I still connected with the hero's plight. Just wasn't the greatest character development ever. What? Contradict yourself much?
actually contradict myself not at all. As I stated, my connection was most greatly with the plight of the plight of what the uh, Rebel Alliance or what the rebels were trying to accomplish in the movie. So I'm a person who's very much finds resonance in the oppressed rising up against the established system, fighting fighting against the system, fighting against whatever the establishment is, and I find a lot of resonance and rooting for those who are trying to stand up against insurmountable odds and trying to, I know, really believing in self-determination and people's right to freedom and all those sorts of things. So that being the core of the movie, that's something that I can very much be connected with and find as being a very strong draw that draws me in. Now, maybe for some other people that doesn't matter. That doesn't move me. That's fine. But the notion that that is not a thing or is not something of interest that could be a pull or a draw for a film or a work of art is absurd. That's one of the most powerful and most passionate things there is in kind of the human experience. It's the yearning to be free, or the willingness to kind of fight for your own self-determination. So I very much uh, found a lot of value in that aspect of the movie, which very much had me invested in following their plight and seeing them work to accomplish that plight and to gain the opportunity to find a way to fight for their freedom. Um, as I said before, I was kind of not originally going to respond to this, to their little mockery or whatever, but as I was reading other comments on other videos since then, I did find a commenter on a video is from one of Jenny Nicholson's videos. He also took kind of the same condescending attitude about the film or about why people like the film, and she made a video called Top 10 Reasons Why You Liked Rogue One. It was similarly condescending to the Mr. Plinkett video. But there was a user on there named Chuck Khan who kind of had a similar viewpoint that he espoused well in what he connected with in the movie, and I just wanted to read that very quickly. So I gather that the main argument here is that the characters in Rogue One don't matter, and because the characters don't matter, then nothing they do matters, and if nothing they do matters, then the movie fails. The argument makes sense theoretically in a screenwriting textbook kind of way. But this movie worked for me despite despite not conforming at face value to classic screenwriting rules of character development. I found myself invested deeply in what the characters were doing, more so than who the individual characters were, or why they were doing it, or whether they would survive. The main character in Rogue One wasn't an individual like Jyn or Cassian. The main character was the Rebel Alliance, a collective whose cause as a viewer I grew more and more deeply invested in as the movie progressed. So it wasn't the survival of the individuals like Jyn and Cassian that I was invested in. It was the success of the rebellion. And so, yeah, so for me, I largely agree with that. The character was not, or the focus of the film is not so much the individual, but the collective and what the collective represented in the arc of that collective, which there is a lot of change and a lot of in-depth aspects to the rebellion and to the fight that they were fighting. You had people coming from, I think, different backgrounds who had different agendas or different reasons why they had this same agenda. And I think some of the interesting aspects were the fact that they showed a dark side of the rebellion, things where people who you see probably as noble might not always take noble means to accomplish their goals, such as when Cassian shoots the guy who might have given up their position and prevented him from being able to take the necessary information back to the rebellion that they needed to complete the mission. But then on the other hand, when he's ordered to shoot Jen's father, he's about that to follow through from above to carry that out. So that's one example of the kind of complexity that the movie highlighted. There are other things that I care about. The red letter media guys talking about there's no story there. That's absurd. They said they didn't know who the main villain of the movie was. You don't know. They said they didn't know the main bad guy, villain, same thing. If you don't know who the main villain in Rogue One is, that's your problem. You can't be helped. That's nothing to do with everybody else. Um, and then the kind of the realistic look of the film. Now that might not matter to a lot of people, but it did matter to me. It had the feel of what made Star Wars for me. Made it very interesting. It's that kind of realistic where you can feel like you're there. If you look at the paneling on the plane in the hangar, you can see the rivets in it. It looked like more like real life and like what you would expect a rebellion to look like. A thrown together enclave of people who are taking scraps of whatever they can to build up their military rather than that kind of shiny, glossy uh, comic book, not even comic, video game looking whatever we saw in the prequel. So again, these aspects might not matter to everybody, but they matter to me. I don't think Rogue One is the greatest film, but I don't think it's garbage. And I think I'm not afflicted with that problem where some people think either a movie has to be either it's the greatest thing you ever saw or it's absolute and total garbage. I can both like a movie and at the same time have problems with the movie. For instance, I can think a movie is good overall, but still also acknowledge that there are some issues with it that weren't the best. I would, for instance, would have spent more time probably with developing Jen in her youth before jumping into the exploits of the film. Maybe Jen with the time where she was with Saul. So then when things happen with Jen and Saul later, they have more personal resonance in regard to them. But the fact that that wasn't in there doesn't, for me, then make the whole movie garbage. And I could also see why they didn't do it because it would have been the movie ran 2 hours and 19 minutes as it was, and I couldn't really figure out, well, what would I cut out to make time for that, and how would you step through the movie to get from when she's a little kid to some of the time with her and Saul spending together, and then jump forward into the forward time and do that whole story. I could see where there's a dilemma and being able to execute all of that in a good, succinct, well-paced film. So, and there's some other things I could have a problem with, but this video's run long enough already. I'm going to link to those comments from that I read. It's from Chuck Khan. It's his handle that he uses about the rebellion being the character of Rogue One. I'm going to link below to the where you can probably see those comments directly on the Jenny Nicholson video. You can see that one as well. And yeah, that's my piece for now. And you're watching 2007. I'm out.